Good morning, it's great to have you here. It's nice to have you a part of our service today. As you're watching this, please remember there are loads of people watching this from different homes. Some of them will be from our three churches, one of which is behind me, that's Wymondham Methodist Church. But if you're not from Wymondham or Morley or Hethersett Methodist churches, or if you're watching this for the first time, I'd like to particularly welcome you to our service today. As we remember that we're part of a bigger thing, there are other people watching with this, but we're part of something much bigger as well. We're in God's hands and He's present with us. So there's loads of different ways the lockdown has affected our sense of connectedness, not being able to see each other physically, not being able to touch. I know there's ways which we can make ourselves feel more connected, and I wonder what ways in the last week you've had a moment where maybe you felt a little bit of connection with somebody. It might have been a phone call, it might have been something to do with social media if you're a user of that. I set out when I was sat outside in the garden that I really hope this video would give us a sense of connectedness. And if you would, just for a moment, pause. I'm going to listen to a little bit of music. Just pause for a moment and think of either the person who put this video onto you, so it might have been a friend who shared the link, or you might be a member of one of the Methodist churches where I'm the minister at Hethersett or Wymondham or Morley. And perhaps remember the people who would be sat around you if you were a member of one of those churches on a Sunday morning, and remember that they're probably sat in front of their screen, their device, watching this with you at the moment. Let's just have a few moments pause for thoughts, and let's just remember people who we long to be more connected with. So here's some images of connectedness. One is of a phone being connected to a charger, and obviously the electricity flows from the plug into the phone. You really didn't need me to tell you that, did you? Then this is headphones being connected to a device. If you're using music at the moment to help you relax or sleep, I haven't got anything as posh as Bluetooth headphones, so these are old-fashioned, clip into your device and connect and then play. And here's an image of a magnet, and it's a connection I'm really interested in because there's no visual clue as to how magnetism works, and for a child who sees time, it can see a little bit magical and mysterious. So there you go, magnetism. Simple things please simple minds, don't they? It's that image of magnetism that for me best sums up the draw between human beings. It's an unseen force that draws us together, and that's why many people are finding the lockdown so tough. Maybe just thinking about this has nudged you thinking about, well, is there a way I could connect with someone else? Perhaps someone you've been out of touch with for a long time. There's so many ways we can still do that if you're a member of a social media community using one of those like Facebook or something like that. You can send an email, you can pick up the phone, you can do it really old school way and sit down and write a card. And maybe watching this has nudged you in that direction. I want to move this on a little bit. I want us to think a little bit about what it means for us to reconnect with God. And again, that image of magnetism seems to me to sum that up. Again, the unseen force of God that draws us to Him. It might be that when you were younger, you felt you had a very real connection to God that's drifted. And if that's you, let me tell you a little bit of my own story. a very, very long time ago. I mean, years, if not definitely decades, and possibly centuries ago, when I was 17, I felt I'd lost my connection with God. It'd been really close when I was a child. There had never been a time as a child when I didn't feel God was a part of my life and a part just of the world around me in a very natural, easy way. And when I was about 16 or 17, I realised I'd lost it. Probably through my teenage years, I'd kept God at a distance. The old saying used to say, if you don't feel close to God, who's moved? And I know I had moved. I'd kept God at a distance. And when I was 16 or 17, I realised how much I was missing that and how much I wanted that back. And if that's you, if that's where you feel today, then maybe this Bible reading we're going to have, a story of Jesus and Peter, 2,000 years old, but it still feels real and fresh, is for you. The story is of his friend Peter. Peter had denied that he'd known Jesus 3 times when Jesus was in an awful lot of trouble, when he was being tried and about to be unjustly executed. And Peter, to keep himself safe, I think, had said 3 times, I don't know who Jesus is. And then after Jesus' death, the Christian narrative says that Jesus rose from the dead, which is what I hold. I'm convinced by that, but that's a different story, not for today. And it said that as Jesus began to appear to his disciples in really mysterious ways, that Peter must have been feeling guilty and remorseful for having let Jesus down. And so it says that Peter went back to his old job. He'd been a fisherman, and he went back to his old job and he goes out fishing. And what we're going to hear next is how Jesus reconnected with Peter. You're going to hear the story read in 2 parts. The first is going to come from my wife Julie, who's going to read the first part of the story. And then the second part of the story is going to be read by Jean, who's a steward in our church at Wymondham.
Jesus and the miraculous catch of fish. Afterward, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee. It happened this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, also known as Didymus, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were together. I'm going out to fish, Simon Peter told them, and they said, We'll go with you. So they went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. He called out to them, Friends, haven't you any fish? No, they answered. He said, Throw your net on the right side of the boat and you will find some. When they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, It is the Lord. As soon as Simon Peter heard him say, It is the Lord, he wrapped his outer garment around him, for he had taken it off, and jumped into the water. The other disciples followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far from shore, about 100 yards. When they landed, they saw a fire of burning coals there with fish on it, and some bread. Jesus said to them, Bring some of the fish you have just caught. So Simon Peter climbed back into the boat and dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish, 153, but even with so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, Come and have breakfast. None of the disciples dared ask him, Who are you? They knew it was the Lord. Jesus came, took the bread and gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. This was now the 3rd time Jesus appeared to his disciples after he was raised from the dead.
When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, he said, you know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my lambs. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said, take care of my sheep. The third time he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt because Jesus had asked him the third time, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my sheep. Very truly, I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will dress you and take you where you do not want to go. Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. Then he said to him, follow me.
So what clues do we see in that story about how we reconnect with God? There's 3 clues, all going to be very quick, so stay with me. First clue is that Jesus has probably been standing on the shore for Peter long before Peter realised he was there. If you feel you need to find God, don't worry, because God's already there. He's already found you. God's always ages ahead of us. And he's already got you. He's already found you. He's already standing on the shore, to use the image of that story, waiting for Peter and waiting for you. Second thing is that when Peter realises Jesus is standing there, the story's quite amusing actually. Peter strips off and belts through the water as fast as he can to get to Jesus. If you feel the presence of God, the only advice I can give you, and this is just one person telling another person, is get to God as fast as you can. Don't mess around. Don't leave it off. Just say, I'll see to it tomorrow. Do it now. If you feel God's touch on your life today, do a Peter. Just get to him as fast as you can. Third thing is the second part of the story, the part that Jean read for us, where Jesus asks Peter 3 times, do you love me? And Peter the third time was quite hurt. And I think he was hurt because the penny dropped that Jesus was matching those times for Peter to give him a chance to tell Jesus that he loved him 3 times, just as a few days or a few weeks earlier he'd said that he didn't know who Jesus was. So there's a kind of symmetry between those 2 things, and that's what's going on in that passage. If there was a time when you did something for God, if there was a time in the past when you were serving God in a particular way that you felt called to, as you feel that reconnection coming, maybe God's calling you back into that. I'm going to leave that there now. This is a little bit longer than we've normally done, and I want to just give some time for you to think. Have a look over onto our Facebook page, because you can see a service sheet there that can guide some ways of your thinking, and use that service sheet alongside. That was prepared by Bryant for us this week, about what it means to hear the voice of Jesus for yourself, to know the voice of Jesus for yourself. But thank you ever so much for joining us this day, and we're going to hear some music that's going to be played by Min, that's going to play us out of the service. Whatever you do today, be blessed by the God who loves you, and pass that blessing on to other people around you.